Today on CityCast Nashville, our city is growing whether we like it or not. But the bigger question is, who gets to shape what it becomes? Today, I am joined by Veronica Foster from the Civic Design Center, who's here to tell us how everyday Nashvillians can have a real voice in planning our city. From walkable streets and green spaces, to better ways to get to work, to major projects like the East Bank development. We are talking about how to stay engaged in the vision for Nashville's future. It's Wednesday, January 14th. I'm your host, Marie Cecile Anderson, and this is what Nashville's talking about. Can we start with a quick history lesson on how the Civic Design Center came to be?
It's kind of a fun story, and it will sound very familiar to people who've been listening to CityCast Nashville for the last several months. So let's take it back to 1995. Downtown Nashville is not a place that people really spend a lot of time. First of all, it's illegal to actually build residential downtown at this time. So not very many people live there, just like the true pioneers. We're still burning trash on the riverfront. And there was this major effort to kind of try to change that. So Mayor Bredesen at the time, he helped kind of implement Bridgestone Arena. That was coming online in 1996, but they were like, how are we going to deal with all this traffic? So they decided they were going to build a 7-lane highway-like road that would cut off downtown from Sobro. It was originally called Franklin Street Corridor, and the name corridor was really kind of indicative of a place that people weren't supposed to spend time. It's just one road that was going to connect two highways. So this is like a couple blocks south of Broadway. It was going to be a major barrier. Pedestrians were not going to be able to cross this. You know, we're talking dangerous, scary, not conducive to any sort of growth for downtown. So there was this group of advocates that came together, and they were like, okay, this does not sound like something that would make a vibrant downtown. Like, just instinctually, one of our founders, Ann Roberts, heard about this, and she was in the Historic Commission at the time. She essentially called up her friend at the Nashville scene, Christine Kraling, and was like, you have got to do something about this. We've got to tell people. Nobody knows that this 7-lane highway is going to cut off downtown. She started writing a bunch of stories. And that was the first thing that these advocates really, really did. And we're like, how do we talk about what could be possible? We need to change this for the better. So essentially, that corridor didn't happen. It's now Korean Veterans Boulevard. But there was a lot of things that had to happen to get to a better design for the Franklin Street corridor. And it really came down to this group of advocates and architects who started meeting. They knew that the Franklin Street corridor wasn't a good idea for design. But what they were trying to figure out was, how can they advocate for something better? And that's really where our conversation starts, right?
Well, what I like about this is it seems so respectful, because there was a lot of community conversation, people were heard, and then that's how change happened over time. And they didn't lead to like protests. It was more, they led with education.
I mean, if you read some of those Nashville Scene articles, you might consider them protest.
Okay. People were very angry.
People were mad, but there were people who were on the inside investigating this. Journalism is really important for uncovering these stories, right?
Right. As we talk about the Tesla tunnel, too. We need those journalists to get down underground and do some investigative reporting. We'll get into that later, but
no, seriously.
Continue.
So it's one of those things where it took something to uncover that this was happening. There, at the time, planning was not what it is today. Planning was let's go back even further. The fact that we had such terrible results from urban renewal across the country sort of shows that planning was very top-down, not listening to people. I mean, the fact that these folks in government and at the federal level were subsidizing building highways that would go through historically Black neighborhoods. It was a lot of misinformation. I mean, having community meetings that were posted on the wrong day on purpose. It was meant to not engage community members, right? So planning for the entire mid-century, it was not engaging community members. So we see a lot of fallout from this as we see the results of sprawl being a norm. And I mean, there's just indications of divesting from our neighborhoods and our communities and not listening to the communities who actually are living there and caring about it. Architects back in the day were not educated about urban design or planning. They were really focused on the building only. And so even experts in design didn't have the right language to talk about what they wanted to see in an area for city planning purposes. So that was just something that was changing a lot in that time in the 90s. New urbanism was an idea that was coming up a lot. And new urbanism is actually really just old urbanism, before highways, walkable communities,
right,
and connected neighborhoods and mixed use development, things that you could access from home. Like, it's things that make sense, right? So that was really what was becoming popular again. And we were seeing that these community members needed to be educated and trained on this. So they decided to start an Urban Design 101 class to teach the advocates not only what they wanted to argue for and advocate for when it came to the Franklin Street corridor, but in general, what makes a good city? What makes a great city? We need to talk about that. Let's get together, unify, and align around the same principles.
Right. And so y'all came up, well, back then they came up with like the 10 principles of Nashville. Mm-hmm. Can we go over those now? Are they still relevant today?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I know it's crazy. So this Urban Design 101 started before the Civic Design Center even existed. And then when the Civic Design Center was founded, there was this idea that, okay, we're advocating for these new urbanism ideas, but we don't have a vision as a city. We were successful with the Franklin Street corridor. Now it's going to be this great boulevard. But what we really need to know is, okay, what is our vision for the city? And that's where the plan of Nashville came to be. And so it was pretty much our first big project of the Civic Design Center. And we actually had our 20th anniversary of the plan of Nashville.
Ooh, happy anniversary.
Yeah, thanks. And it was meant to engage folks in the inner neighborhoods in the downtown core so that instead of turning our backs on downtown, like I was saying, pretty much downtown was nothing at the time. So let's face downtown. Let's orient our minds towards planning and investing and visioning in the heart of the city, the place that's actually everyone's neighborhood, because everyone could come to downtown. So that's where the plan of Nashville really focused its efforts, is downtown and the surrounding neighborhoods. And out of this process, this visioning process, which the Civic Design Center would then focus all of our efforts on for this 50-year vision. I know, crazy to think about. Actually, these principles came from all of the 800 plus community members that participated in the workshops. So we kept hearing, let's reconnect to the riverfront. We want more walkable streets. We want streets that actually connect people, and they're not just for cars, right? We want more parks and greenways. We want to focus on preserving what makes Nashville special. All of these principles of the plan of Nashville really came from those workshops. And that's how we're rooted in focusing our work in this urban design ecosystem.
And that's why you use the term civic and not urban design.
So civic design really, we originally, when we were researching how we were going to form this urban design center. We had this class, Urban Design 101. We had the Urban Design Forum. It was all about urban design. But as a part of this community engagement process and learning that we wanted to be more bottom up with planning, the founders realized that we needed to use the word civic in our name because it reflects the people in the place that they live. That it's not just urban design, but it's design of the people. When you're really thinking about design, it should be democratized and created by the community. And that's what we really focus all of our efforts on.
Right. So it's rooted in people's ideas. So what does that look like in practice?
I mean, I think that today it looks maybe different than it did at the time.
Right.
But I think that when we're talking about people's ideas, we have a lot of plans in our city now. We've been asking people since then, since we were founded, there's been a lot of plans that have come out of the city. The Nashville Next plan came after the Plan of Nashville as a formal citywide master plan. There was the walk and bike plan. There's In Motion. There's Connect Downtown. There's all these things. We've been asking the community, what do they want to see in the city? And we have a lot of these plans, but now there's a lot of planning fatigue. So it's kind of this balance between making sure that we're still listening to people today who may not have been around when those plans were formed, and also respecting that we've listened to people for many years. And that is, I think, what a big challenge is in Nashville right now, is navigating this planning fatigue that we're seeing, but also making sure that we're listening to people and implementing plans that still reflect the ideas of today's residents.
Okay, here's a personal question. When I have friends come to Nashville and we're driving the interstate and we're trying to get from my house across town to my mother's, time and time again, my friends are like, did they not work with urban planners to design Nashville? So you're saying 20 years ago this conversation started, but how hard is it to change what has already been created? I mean, clearly we're getting a new stadium, but there are so many limitations.
I know. And that's why we have to stay rooted in a big vision. What are we really trying to achieve in 50 years? Because I think people have a really hard time with that. I mean, when you're just trying to get to work every day and you're stuck in traffic and you don't have anywhere to park anymore and you're like, wait a minute, I don't want to take the bus. Like, I don't want to change my lifestyle. I think that people have a really hard time making that change and adapting their current lifestyle when we're trying to plan and consider and implement visions that might not come to fruition for a very long time. In planning and in this work, you really have to be optimistic, because if people do decide that taking the bus is a better option, we're going to get more cars off the road, and then we're going to see that traffic start to subside or reduce. But it takes time and it takes choices being made by people. So I think that when we're talking about all of these barriers, the infrastructure barriers to building more housing and a lot of these things that people are really concerned about, we also have to think about, okay, but we do need to build more housing, and that has to be a priority, right? It's all of the things in urban planning and design and all of these guiding principles that the Civic Design Center focuses on. We're not a single issue organization. We're thinking about transportation and greenways and housing, and we're thinking about representing our community members. All of these things have to work together in order to make a great city. It can't be just focus on the housing, but don't focus on how those people are going to get to work.
Right.
It'll be
it's almost
fine.
like a Band-Aid to a dam that's going to break anyway.
Exactly.
Well, folks, if you are at home nerding out as much as I am over this conversation, I'm so excited to let Veronica tell you about the new Civic Design 101 class they're hosting, which is taking place over 2 weekends in February or March. Who is this class for and what will we learn?
Civic Design 101 is the new iteration of Urban Design 101 that we talked about that started in 1996. And so a lot of things have changed in Nashville in 20 years. I don't think anybody who took that class back in 1996 thought that Nashville would be where it is today.
And if you are one of those people that took that class 20 years ago, we want to hear from you. Nashville at citycast.fm.
Absolutely. I think that that's just something to acknowledge is when we're trying to educate people on what are good design principles, I think those things have stayed the same, but it's how fast we have to react to them and what community members are able to do that's changed so much. I mean, we still believe in walkable communities. That's something that we're still teaching and talking about, right? But in having a course like Civic Design 101, we're not just teaching the folks about the principles, but we're actually hoping that we can teach them about, like, how do you build a community? How do you actually try to make change in your community? How do you make sure your neighbors want to help come along with that effort and make that change? How do we make positive change together in a community? I mean, a lot of folks are really, they're worried. They hear these things happening and they're immediately like, put their guardrails up. Their hackles are raised. They're like, what are you doing changing things in my neighborhood? And I think that there's a lack of trust that has happened in historic planning where they weren't listening to people. And that's changed. We have to respect that has changed a lot. But because Nashville is just growing so much, it's going to grow without us. So we need to figure out what we can do as community members to help come along with that growth and make positive change that actually reflects what the people want in communities. So our goal with this course is to also give people tools and resources. For instance, the Nashville Department of Transportation has a really great tactical urbanism program, which is short-term experimental interventions, and community members can apply for this permit to do short-term interventions, but it's kind of hard to imagine doing it and doing it yourself. What we hope to do is make sure that people know that this course will go beyond the manual. We'll kind of give people confidence so that they can feel like, all right, I want to actually make change in my neighborhood. Here's what me and my neighbor can do. We can apply for this tactical urbanism permit. Here's our idea to make our neighborhood safer, more walkable, implement a ground mural or traffic calming or something like that. And there's actually, NDOT is giving out grants to do this, like $20,000 to communities if they get the permit. So the change is within reach. We want to be taking tours around neighborhoods and really having practical conversations around what have been your experiences in neighborhood meetings, and let's practice what this would be like in a neighborhood meeting if you're trying to present your idea and someone was against it. Like, let's talk about de-escalation. It's been really cool to see in our previous iterations of it. There have been people who have participated in this course who are just community members who wanted to get more involved in their neighborhood. And there were people who took the course who actually changed their whole career path. And one of them in particular now works at the National Department of Transportation, like completely didn't work in this world at all. So it's just, I think it's really inspiring for people to know that they have tools, and this breaks down the barriers to learning how to use those tools.
Well, when's the deadline to apply?
So the deadline to apply is January 20th. So it's coming up. But really, we're looking for diverse perspectives from all over the city, geographic diversity. We want people to be able to be resources. So the idea is it's actually a program, a neighborhood ambassador program. So once you take this course, you will actually have more confidence to be a resource for fellow neighbors that you can get together and actually take action.
Okay, if my HOA president is listening right now, I want you to sign up for this. That sounds like something he would really enjoy. What or who is driving the conversation about our built environment these days?
I feel like everybody thinks they're an expert in the built environment right now. I think it's a great question. I mean, there are so many great organizations right now that are really just working towards more walkable, dense, new urbanist ideals in our communities. I think that we're really seeing a lot of that come to a head, and people just know more of what's happening in our cities than they did 25 years ago, 30 years ago. That makes people nervous, but that also makes people think that they're an expert. This is what should be. And you know what? Community members are experts in their experience. I think that we have to respect that as a part of the conversation is you are an expert in your own experience, but also how can we make sure that we're thinking long term in that big vision?
Who do you think should be driving that conversation?
I can only answer that it should be the people. I mean, that we're listening to the people, we're reflecting those ideas in our planning department's visions, in our long-term visions. And then we're actually implementing those plans in an effective way. I mean, the thing is that, we can talk about some examples from recent days.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we heard, Franklin Street Corridor was a 7-lane highway that was going to cut off downtown. Sounds a lot like what we've been kind of advocating against, which is another 6-lane highway-like road through the East Bank.
That's right, folks. That's the East Bank Boulevard. That's what we've been hitting at.
And so what we can say is planning put together an amazing vision plan for the East Bank. Imagine East Bank back in 2022. The thing was, there were 3 options for the design of the boulevard. And one of those options was a 6-lane corridor. I say corridor because it doesn't mean it's a street, that it's a destination where people want to go. A 6-lane corridor feels like a place that you drive through, and that's its purpose. And so the 6-lane corridor was an option. And there were 2 other options that had 4 lanes and then bike lanes included. So when we got to this phase, we're talking about the design of the boulevard, and we saw that they had seemingly disregarded the other 2 options. It didn't make sense. And I think that's where the conversation is important, because you realize that you put together, your ideas, you share your ideas, and community members and organizations come out and speak for something. For instance, we worked a lot with Walk Bike Nashville to actually talk about how we thought that there should be bike lanes on the boulevard at the time. And so they put together this plan with these other options, and we're like, okay, great. This is a vision. When we get to the actual design phase, we still have a lot to talk about. So it's this follow through of, once you have a vision, now you have to engage community members. Again, if you don't have a clear path forward, there's still the design process. And this is where communities should also have another opportunity to speak up. So That's what we're seeing happen. It's like we want to make sure that, we were confused as to why the 6-lane boulevard was the priority design. Who's driving this conversation? Was there something in the background? We were trying to investigate that. And we were talking a lot with all of our metro partners and trying to understand, where the 6-lane design was coming from when we had other options. Really, I think it was driven by these engineering numbers that were coming out. And we don't want our city streets to be ruled by engineering numbers that are all focused on efficiency of traffic. Because that is what makes a corridor, not a street.
What gives you hope about Nashville's future?
I think truly the fact that people want to speak up, and there's been so much. I mean, the East Bank Boulevard is a great example of all of these community members who have spoken up about what they really want to see at the East Bank. They're thinking long term. They're thinking visionary. This neighborhood isn't going to be fully built for another 20 years. And people are excited about the future. And we're seeing neighborhood groups respond. And, they're wanting a street. They're wanting this destination. They want a place that's for them, that's not, going to just drive tourism. We want to drive activations that are for residents. And I think that's what people are really fired up about. And I still think that the last, 2 years and the mayoral campaign of how he wants people to stay, I think that is still driving the conversation for what people really want to see, is they want to see things for them and not just for tourism. And I think because of that, people are really activated and they want to learn about how they can stay because they like the direction that Nashville is going, but also how do we keep our core identity? And I think that's what people need to come together and decide.
Veronica, this has honestly blown my mind. So, folks, if this too has affected you, sign up for this Civic Design 101. Educate yourself and then go out into your community and have these conversations to make Nashville even better, because we got to be patient, but we got to have those conversations. So
we've got to be patient. And this course is free to participate.
Free. Love it.
And it's really low commitment in terms of the actual days that we're asking people to be there. But the people who are going to participate are committing to getting engaged in their neighborhoods. And I hope that the CityCast Nashville community is those people who want to get engaged.
That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. And don't forget, you can support this show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Nashville neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell your friends? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Nashville newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Doodles!